Just walk away. Just walk away, and there will be an end to the horror.
Yeah. Come. Yeah, come on.
Everybody listening to this now, I am speaking to JTO, otherwise known as John the Other, obviously. I don't think he needs an introduction. He's well known among all of our circles. But I've had a few requests from people that have said, hey, why don't you talk to this dude? And that's what we're doing right now. We're going on the fly. I'm not really prepared. I think because, number one, this man comes from the same country I do, so I have a good idea of how he thinks. And number two, his persona is very well known, and I think we can make this work on the fly. So, John.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, why don't we start with this question? And actually, I've thought about this, actually. And I think this question will answer a lot of people's worries or interests. How the fuck did you make it from the MRA community to the MGTOW community? What happened there?
Well, I realized that the men's rights movement is not going to succeed as it exists right now. Number one, you can have a conversation with a person and explain to them problems like, infant genital mutilation or the bias in the family courts or the suicide problem or the homelessness problem, and we all know the list, right? I'm not going to go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they will agree with you that these are real problems, right? And then all you have to do is say the word girl, or somebody else can pop into the conversation and say the word girl, and all of those concerns for men and boys go out the window. Like, it's a magical effect. And, a girl is inconvenienced that, she has to pay for a fucking ice cream bowl or something. And then children getting mutilated and men dying on the streets, just whoop, out the window it goes. And in fact, when stood against the problems that girls face, the tendency is to overtly make fun of and belittle anybody who dares to have concern for men and boys. And we witness the woman who called herself Chanty Binks in Toronto singing "Cry Me a River" over the suicide problem.
Right.
And I wish I could tell you what the mechanism is that causes this kind of disconcern for men. It's like, well, suddenly they're no longer human. We don't care. And the problem with the men's rights movement is that it overtly puts the problems of men and boys as a problem to be stood in comparison to that of women and girls. Well, who's going to win? Not the men. And because feminists, because they go after feminists, the public perception is that you are trying to elevate the men, even if you're trying to do something positive, like, reduce homelessness or suicide. You're doing it with this agenda that is perceived as we're doing it at the cost of women. I shouldn't say never. Maybe after 200 or 300 years, we will have evolved as a society where that isn't the problem anymore. But it won't succeed in my lifetime, and I am not much interested in fighting an unwinnable fight. So, obviously, I still have concern for, men, and I happen to be one of them, so I want my life to be good. So I'm not going to fight an unwinnable fight. It's like choosing a format for battle where you're guaranteed to be at a disadvantage. and it just doesn't seem like a good or a smart or productive plan. So that was my migration to MGTOW.
The way you described it, actually. Now, I'm not going to try and speak for everybody that's flocked to MGTOW for one reason or another, but the way you've described it is, I think it's very similar to my own experience. However, I didn't have the experience that you had coming from actually a well-established part of men's rights activism. Let's not be shy about it. It was well established. It still is very well established. So I didn't have that experience. But when you said about, well, there's a point where you eventually kind of give up on trying to change the minds of the people that make the laws, so to speak.
Well, yeah, because when you try to change other people's minds, it's always going to be framed in the context of, well, this is at the cost of women.
Yes.
Because if you men, well, then the opposite or the complementary sex is women, right? So
yeah.
Every problem, whether it's homelessness or suicide or employment or getting beat up in the courts or whatever, this is all not necessarily so, but it is perceived as versus the same problem from the female side. Well, the public is going to choose the female side as long as there's a choice to be made.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's a non-starter. It's a dead duck from the get-go.
Yeah.
And admittedly, it took me a couple of years to figure that out, right? Yeah. Because I thought that there was a compassion to be tapped into. I thought if only we could just explain it correctly, get the people to understand.
Yeah.
And no, that's not going to work at all. The harder you try, and in fact, the harder you try to be civil about it, that you're trying to approach this from a humane perspective. It's like, no, I don't want to destroy women or hurt them or anything like that. It's like, this is my old attitude, right? That because they see that they can put you into a defensive mode, that they can go, well, you hate women, or you're a rape apologist, or whatever, some other negative thing they want to throw at you, that you in fact are not that thing, and you're trying to be a humane person. They've got you over a barrel. Now they can basically hit you with a stick forever, to their grand amusement, because they've already got what they want in terms of legal advantage and preferential treatment in the courts, preferential access to funding from all these different areas of public money. And so that's not even the fight. They don't even enter into that argument. They just get to taunt you by going, you're a rape apologist, and they know that you're a humane person and you certainly don't want that, so they can fight you on that arena where you don't even want to be. And it's grandly amusing because you're the ultimate sitting duck for them.
Exactly. And this is what I find interesting about your scenario, your situation. Coming from your background, what's curious to me is what was the moment that made you kind of switch over? Because a lot of the MGTOW men that I know personally, or I know through the internet, or I talk to, they don't really come from the same background that you do. Okay, I mean, you have a very solid history of doing what you've done for men's rights, and
I was an MRA for a lot of years.
Exactly.
MGTOW, yeah.
Exactly, and I'm curious, and I think a lot of people are. Is what was that moment? I mean, what was that single incident or moment, if you can reduce it to that?
I don't know that there's like a single incident, but there was. Let me just think if I can realize what it was. I think I realized that the idea of compassion that I thought there was some, I realized was wrong, because I was trying to engage people's compassion. Like, let's look at, what happens to guys who, are disabled or encounter an injury or can't work, like who have been productive and they were like the pillars of their families, or they were, the good guy providing for a wife and kids or whatever. And then something happens to a guy, he gets injured and can't work, or he has a mental, collapse. He has a depression perhaps, or, lots of people go through a phase in their life where it's not that they're physically disabled, it's just that they can't bring themselves to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And what we do with guys when that happens is not what we do with women. If a woman has a collapse, whether it's because she's injured and she can't do the same job she used to do, or whether it's because, she had kids and now she has chemical depression or whatever, we as a society take care of those people. We give them a disability pension. We don't throw them out of their families. We don't throw them onto the street. We don't craft up a spurious criminal allegation and then criminalize them so that they're no longer a member of the community.
We don't drive them to suicide.
No, we don't do any of that. We take care of them very, very compassionately, which I think is a good thing. Because as much as at times I may be angry, I don't bear like a hatred towards a half of the human race.
No.
Although they do try, the feminist movement for their part really do put in the work, and they study hard to try to get you to hate women. I think, in fact, that,
oh yeah.
And I'm not just like being kind of jokey and snarky here. I really do think that it is their goal, their overt, conscious, chosen goal. They want you to hate women, because if you do, then they own you. They own your reactions, and they have created their perfect enemy to be used in their propaganda. If you don't hate women, they have to work hard to portray you as that. But if they've actually succeeded in getting you to be a person, yes, I fucking hate women, then they got you, and that's it. Their advertising campaign has succeeded at that point.
Yeah, it's like you know what it's like. It's like the ultimate troll. They poke you enough times with that same stick
until you go crazy.
Yeah, you have no other choice but to go, fuck you, I hate you, and everything you stand for.
And that's when the troll wins. Yeah. So, getting back to how the difference in how we treat men and women, we're compassionate and we're caring towards women in situations of disability, whether it's physical or psychological.
Yeah.
But for men, we discard them. We throw them away. In fact, we don't even really look at them as if they're human anymore, because you walk down a busy commercial street, where there's a shopping district, and you'll see a homeless guy there with a sign, and people walk past him eating ice cream cones and drinking coffees, and like he's invisible.
Yeah, they don't even look at him.
That guy doesn't even count as a human being.
No.
And you don't know where he came from. This guy will be middle-aged. It's like you can see that at some point he had a career or some kind of a job, and now he's fucked. Well, good luck, buddy.
Oh, shit, man.
But you don't see, I shouldn't say you don't, but you see far fewer women in the same situation. A middle-aged woman who had a career of some kind, or maybe she had kids and something went haywire in her life and she's on the street now. You see maybe 1 out of 10 of the homeless are a woman, where there 9 out of 10 are men.
Yeah.
And I'm pulling those numbers out of my butt right now, so it's not like I got a statistic. But
Right.
it's mostly men.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty universally understood at this point.
Yeah, and I realized that that compassion for men exists in a vacuum when it's just you and that guy, because you have a human understanding. This is a guy, and he's hurt, or he's got a disability, or he's mentally ill, or some tragedy occurred, or he's physically disabled. So you'll feel some human compassion for him, but you stand him in the broader context where there's 100 different things vying for your attention, and there's a female in distress. your attention is always going to go to the female.
Yeah, he disappears. He disappears.
His priority goes down to zero, where everything else gets elevated above him. And in that sense, we don't have a compassion for men in our culture. We might, as individuals, as this MRA or this MGTOW guy wants to go help men, but as a culture, no, it's just not there.
All right. Okay, let's go in this direction, because this has been kind of a topic of conversation, actually, between myself and my cousin, who is visiting now.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to introduce him to MGTOW. And one of the strongest talking points that I've brought up to him is the attention that men get in society when it comes to their suffering. And it's funny, because if you, and this is just from experience, if you approach other men who are unaware of men's rights and MGTOW and that kind of thing, and of course we call them blue pillars.
Yeah.
If you approach these people with these concepts, and I swear to God, I've seen it again in my own cousin's eyes, this light turn on as you speak to them, and you tell them about the invisibility or the non-existence of men and their suffering, they sort of tilt their head a little bit and go, you know what? Yeah. And the reason they can do that is because they've experienced it themselves, but have been unable to express it.
Yeah, they can't articulate it. And even if you were never on the street, even if you were never a completely discarded man,
Mm-hmm.
You are, as a man, invisible until you're of benefit to somebody else.
Yes.
So if you are a good boyfriend, you're buying her stuff, or you're, providing shelter, you're providing housing for her, or you're paying for, some of her clothes or whatever, you are you're basically a workhorse, right?
Yes.
Your role is to be a provider,
yes.
and in some cases protector. Like, you're the forever unpaid bodyguard.
Yes.
And we as guys get this drummed into us. The expression from, I guess, the 1970s that I remember is an eligible bachelor, right?
Yes, yes.
Which means a guy who is a prospect to be somebody's wife or somebody's
slave.
Well, in blue pill language, somebody's boyfriend or husband, a spouse of some kind.
Yeah.
But what does the word eligible actually translate to in terms of the qualities of that guy? Yeah. Well, I've looked this up. It means he's got money.
Yeah.
An eligible bachelor is a guy with money. It's like saying, it's like you're talking about a natural resource in the mining industry. A mineral deposit that nobody's laid a claim to yet.
Yeah, an eligible oil reserve.
Yeah, it's a stand of timber that nobody's got logging rights to yet. Well,
yeah.
Step up, girls, and be the boyfriend of this stand of timber and make the money from cutting it down.
Yeah.
It's like, so as a man, you're a commodity to be exploited. Now, the other thing in the argument, and this is back in my MRA days. I mean, where you're trying to convince the public of this perception that we have of men being given the shaft in all these different ways. The argument itself is an imbalanced argument. We're arguing from a position of no power, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As much as the public likes to go, well, it's a patriarchy and men are on top, and because the president of the U.S. is a man, therefore all men are the president. That's, I guess, the logic. Right? Right? Or the CEO of Google is a man, therefore all men are the CEO of Google. I mean, isn't that how their logic goes?
Absolutely.
But in reality, the average guy is a guy working some unimportant. Well, I mean, it's important to him, but he doesn't have like this big, high status, high power, high influence job. Most guys schlep to work and schlep home every day, and they're happy if they have a little bit extra after they put some food on the table.
They get a little bit of pussy at the end of the day, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah. Maybe if they were good that week, right?
Yeah.
If they were a good little boy. And so the argument over, whether we're going to publicly fund a political effort to end genital mutilation of children, or we're going to try to do something about the male homeless population, we're going to try to address suicide in men. The argument is it's against a public that is largely gynocentric, that is female focused, and we don't have anything to negotiate with. So it's not like two people standing on equal footing from an equal position of power arguing over some point of rhetoric or logic or politics.
Yeah.
This is a greatly imbalanced argument in the public sphere, where they can, from their high horse of controlling the vast majority of the editorial tone of public media, Salon.com, Huffington Post, Times of London, etc. We go through all these different media outlets. They all have a heavily gynocentric view, and they will piss from a great height on you.
Yeah.
Because you're not at the level where they are to offer any substantial resistance other than calling them a very mean name, right? And in a negotiation, that means that you're begging for their mercy rather than negotiating strongly with a carrot and a stick.
Yeah. It's like it's easy to say you're king of the hill when you have a very firm palm on the forehead of anybody that wants to mount that hill as well.
Yeah.
These people are delusional.
Well, it's just in the principle of negotiation. If one side has power and the other side doesn't, that is not a negotiation.
No.
That is the side without power pleading. Now, they might be pleading in very sophisticated terminology. They may be asking, using diplomatic language. But essentially, if there is a power imbalance, a substantial power imbalance, the side without the power is pleading, and the side with the power is dictating terms.
Okay, but remember
negotiation, right? So, and that's where the men's rights movement is. They don't have a stick. Okay.
Well, remember this though. You got to remember this. When it comes to, let's say, feminist rhetoric, their entire platform is based on the fact that men have all the power.
Yeah, but we know that's not true.
Yeah,
because if it was true, then we could do things for men. We'd have access to funding, right?
Exactly.
That's
the whole point. I mean, I remember I was repeating this to my cousin just recently, actually tonight. If we live in a world that is dominated and controlled by men, then why can't you go out on the street, even in this country, in Southeast Asia, get in a confrontation with a woman, slap her in the face, and have everybody go, "Good job"? Doesn't fucking happen.
We're not slap her in the face. Just tell her she's stupid and wrong.
Yeah, just be aggressive.
Never mind the violence, because that kind of puts a separate question in, is they might just intervene because of the violence. But if it's just a verbal exchange,
yes,
you're one of you cut in front of line in the other one, right? And we're going to make that the contentious thing. Which one of you cut into the line? Each one says, "No, I was here first. You're a jerk off." And the other one goes, "You misogynist pig, let me retain my position in the line." I mean, using more formal language than would be used.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Well, whose side are they going to take? If both of these people arguing are of approximately equal social status as through, looking at their clothes, like one of them isn't a scummy-looking, dirty homeless guy, and they're both, rough, they're both reasonably well-dressed, they're both of approximately equal level of good-looking for their sex.
Yeah. Class.
The woman is going to win.
Of course.
Hands down.
Well, and that's the whole point. I mean, I've experienced it here many, many times, and you don't need to be violent. You don't need to be physical, like you just said. All you have to do is express an opinion that is contrary to the female, the female that you might be with, and you've lost every vote for yourself.
Every single guy on that street, except for the malcontent MRA or MGTOW guy, is gonna back the woman, not you. Well, that means.
And by the way, there are no malcontent MGTOW or MRA guys in this part of the world.
Well, there's a few. I mean, I'm one, right?
Well, no, I'm talking about Southeast Asia.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They're not there. Like, seriously, they're not there. They will take a beating. They will get stripped naked and beat to the bone. They don't exist here. There's no men here that say, "Wait a second,
this is crap. I'm not tolerating this anymore." Yeah,
it doesn't exist. And the only conclusion that I can come to is because they're very what is the word?
Scared.
Yeah, scared. They're scared, but they're conservative. They're very, very conservative in their lifestyle here. It's a lot more religious, say, than the West. So, but remember this: feminism. Where? Who? What? Huh?
Feminism? Yeah, they haven't had the feminist revolution yet.
No. However, a man will get the same response if he does the same thing here, and sometimes even worse.
Oh yeah. Well, in a way, I actually am glad of feminism because it woke men up. It woke us up. Prior to feminism, we had the traditional gender roles. The guy was still the goddamn plow horse. He was still the long-suffering servant. Now, there was a little bit of social esteem that went with being a good long-suffering servant. So he wasn't just a despised servant in the way that a man is through a feminist lens.
Right.
But it was still a crap deal. I'm glad of feminism because it made things so humanly intolerable for men that it woke us up.
Yeah, that's right, man. Absolutely.
But so that was the second part of my awakening, was the understanding of the power dynamic in a negotiation, where each party in a negotiation has some power and some leverage. Like I have a carrot, I have something to offer that I will put on the table. So if I can get what I want, here's the thing that you benefit, and I also have a stick that I can put some negative consequences on the table too. In the men's rights world, they have neither a carrot nor a stick.
No.
They have no power. They are pleading, please give us, some funding for male shelters, or stop cutting the dicks on little kids, or whatever.
Well, okay, John, does a male shelter exist for domestic abuse victims who are male in Canada right now?
I think there's one, and it was recently set up by a cafe.
Okay. Oh, okay. So there's one.
Yeah, it's in the last that did it. Now, there was one other one run by Earl Silverman out of his home, and he spent 25 years or so trying to get somebody to help fund it, and he eventually gave up because he exhausted himself, and then he hung himself.
Yeah. We all know that story, man. It's sad.
Yeah, I don't think he hung himself out of, no, I think it was, well, maybe if I hang myself, that'll get some attention. I don't think it was a hanging in despair. I think it was like, well, maybe this will work. And of course it didn't. Although
it's desperation.
Yeah, he had tried everything else, and he was at the end of his wits.
Yeah, end of his rope, and then he actually fucking made it real.
Yeah.
Wow. And okay, what about America? The United States, do they have it?
I don't believe they do. You know what? They might. There's so much. America has such a huge population.
Yeah, compared to Canada. Yeah.
That there's so much news that comes out of that place that there may be something somewhere. But the problem is it doesn't get any public attention if it's there.
Yeah.
If-
Now let's. I want to throw at you a comparison from here in Southeast Asia. Male shelter.
Yeah.
It doesn't even exist on the lips.
No, it's not even a concept.
No, it's unheard of. It's like you're speaking a different language if you even mention it. However, they do have female-only train cars now. They have female-only parking spots.
Yeah,
they have female-only hospitals. Actually, in Jakarta, where I live now, there is a huge hospital for women only. If you even ask for a train car for men, not even men will even address that.
Well, that's because, and it's not because they can't understand the concept. It's because social reality, and I don't mean sort of the real reality of moving food from farms to grocery stores. The social reality, the narrative, the story world that we live in.
Yeah.
And as human beings, we're not just, animals in the forest looking for something to eat and a place to sleep. There is a social reality. That's what culture is. Social reality is under the control of women. They are the dictators of what is real in the world of the social human, in the social society. That's why we still believe in the wage gap. It's not a real thing. It's part of the story. And it is under control of women. Women control social reality. Which, again, is another nail in the coffin of the men's rights movement. It doesn't matter how good your stats are, or how well-researched your argument is, or how well presented you are. You are male, and thus not in control of social reality.
And you know what, man? That is actually one reason why I never drifted into the men's rights movement or men's rights activism before I actually decided, okay, I'm a MGTOW. And one of the reasons was precisely that, is that because I was living here for so long, and I started to listen to people talk, I realized that even where I am, where there is no feminism, it came down to there is nothing that any man here could do through voice, through power, through even elected power, to change the way that typical society thinks on that level. There's no way it would ever happen. Impossible.
Because women control social reality.
Yeah, exactly. And, I really want anybody listening to this now to understand, and I've said this before and I've repeated it many times, but we're having this conversation and the topic is here. Please, 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 do not think that what you're experiencing in what you might consider the feminized West is any different than the rest of the world, regardless of what the media tells you, because it's not. It is not.
It's just maybe a little bit more elaborate.
Yeah, maybe more elaborate. You have to understand, Canada, which is basically my original home, tends to have a lot more politics involved in male versus female gender equality type of thing. Here, you're not going to find it in the politics. What you'll do is you'll find it in the homes. You'll find it between mama and papa in the family.
Yeah.
And I don't see really the difference, except that it hasn't become kind of written law in order to perpetuate the next concept of equality. It just doesn't happen here. That doesn't happen here. But it doesn't need to.
In Southeast Asia, which is where you are right now, you don't have the feminist revolution of the last 40 years. You still have a traditionalist structure.
Yes.
The feminist revolution, and I guess you have to start from the traditionalist social structure, understanding, and I'm speaking, I guess, to some of the people in Canada, in the West, or in the U.S., that the traditionalist model is a gynocentric model, hardcore gynocentric. We think that, the father is the king of the castle and all that. No. He's the guy who goes into the outside world and is the outward face of the family. That's where it ends. He's the outward face of the family, but he answers to the mother, to his wife.
Yes.
She's the one in charge of the family unit, and the family unit is the core of the traditionalist social structure.
Yes.
That's the basic unit of governance.
His only charge is to make sure that they are fed and clothed and housed.
Yeah, in appropriate style.
Yes, that's it.
And,
besides that, he has no power. None.
That's
Zero.
Right. He's the outward-facing employee of the family.
Yeah.
And he's the one who has to do the heavy lifting, the dirty work, disciplining the kids, and so on.
Yes.
There's shit outside the house needs to be painted or fixed or whatever. Get out there, buddy. That's your job. Yeah. The feminist innovation on that is not a move away from that gynocentric model. It is to amplify female power rather than to for Westerners who have lived through 40 or 50 years of the feminist revolution, they think that the traditionalist model was a male-centric patriarchy, like the patriarchal family model. They think that the feminist revolution was a feminization of culture away from a masculine culture. No, it was a feminine culture. The feminist revolution simply amplified the female power and even further diminished the public esteem of a male role. Like, he was the outward-facing slave of the family, and he had a little bit of public esteem as long as he did his job right. Yeah. And feminism, he's still that, but they took away any of the esteem he might have had. Yeah.
They basically took away any, I guess esteem is a good way to put it. There's another word I'm looking for, because what it comes down to is respect. That's the word. He loses all the respect for what he's already, for the jobs he's already been given.
Yeah.
He's already been given these roles, and he does it well. And with that job and role, he's given respect, and he's given certain privileges. And generally here in a very, I guess, old style culture, he's respected for that, and he accepts the privileges, and the women accept that privilege
because it's necessary for that structure to function, for him to have some power.
Yes.
That, like, as the sort of breadwinner, as the guy going out to make a living for the family, he has to have some power in society, or he simply can't do that job of going out and making the money for them.
Exactly. And you know what? That translates now in this traditional society. That translates into a lot of acceptance from the society around him of control over his woman, his wife. He's allowed to say no. He's allowed to say fuck you.
But that's because it's his responsibility to make sure the family stays provided for and out of debt, and so on.
Exactly.
Now, it may also be that the reason you still have a traditionalist model in South Asia is that the Western world, in terms of Canada, the US, UK, and so on, has transferred a huge amount of their industrial and manufacturing base out of North America and into South Asia.
Yes.
So there are the jobs that used to be in North America. A lot of them are in South Asia. Now they've evolved, obviously, because we have technological innovation and much more roboticization and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the economic difference in terms of dollar value of these different economies, those jobs can still be done by human beings in South Asia and have a productive social economy, right?
Yeah.
They can't necessarily be done in North America anymore and still provide enough of an income for people to have a good life doing them.
Yes. Which really devalues the worth of a man.
Yeah, but see, that's what these two things are tied together. Is the feminist revolution cannot yet disrupt South Asia because in doing so they get rid of the productive workers. You replace it all, or you outsource it, as we did with North America. We outsource the vast majority of our manufacturing economy to other countries. Well, okay, we don't have those jobs for men anymore here.
Yeah.
But now we can,
it's given to men here.
Transfer wealth instead of from an individual working a job and transferring his wealth to his wife or having her control the checkbook of the family. At the level of local family governance, being the family is the basic unit of social governance.
Yeah.
We do it now through big government, through central government, either provincial or federal.
Mm-hmm.
Or in the U.S. it would be state or federal.
Mm-hmm.
And then the government becomes the principal financial provider of a woman rather than the individual man.
Absolutely. That's interesting, man. I haven't really thought about it on that level, but I think you're right.
Now, I'm obviously vastly simplifying this to condense it down into a little, soundbite. And I'm not discounting the fact that, there's a huge female workforce in North America.
Well, you have to understand though. I've been here a long time, and I've kept my eye on, people that get educated through the education system here, which is not very good, and where they end up. And a lot of the time, you're absolutely right, they end up doing the hard labor for multinational companies that are completely outside of this country.
Yep.
In order to provide them with the products they need. And it has to do with tourism is a big one.
But all of my electronics are made outside of Canada. They're made in South Africa.
Yes.
Some of them are made in China and Japan, but a huge amount of it is in little South Asian countries that is just an outsourcing assembly or outsourcing industrial manufacturing for North American corporations.
Yep, absolutely, man. I've seen. It's funny because here in Indonesia, I think if I was to rank it, the top two jobs that anybody can hope for is either tourism or some kind of mass production that we're talking about. They'll end up on a cruise liner, working for a shit wage, just to make.
Sending more than half of it back to girlfriend or wife. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And girlfriend or wife is back here, fucking foreigners in the hopes that they'll get something better. I've seen that so many times, man.
It's, I hate to use hyperbolic language. It's a slave caste society.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But going forward to MGTOW is you can't change other people. You can only change yourself.
Yes.
And the men's rights movement, we talked about the power imbalance. That in the argument, there's no stick and no carrot. the stick and the carrot are on the female side, or the feminist side, or the blue pill side.
Yeah.
And so you, as an MRA, you're stuck there going, well, come on, give me something, come on, like, I'm a human. And they're like, fuck you, like, and then they go, you hate women, and it is a ha-ha, right? Like, it's when they insult you, or go, I mean, the mother's basement dweller, small penis loser, that's kind of, I mean, that's a bit worn out. But then they go, you're a woman hater, and the insult woman hater is a social death.
Yeah.
If you hate women, that is social death for you,
Yeah.
whether you do or not, because the insult, it's like saying, traitor. It's like saying, in the time of war, collaborator with the enemy.
Well, you know what's interesting is that the kaleidoscope of names you can drop on a man to fuck his life up go beyond woman hater. They translate to pedophile,
Creep, pervert,
rapist, and everybody is on board with that. It's fucking unbelievable, man.
Yeah, and they even know that it's not. They know it's just slander, right?
Yeah.
Like someone calls you a creep,
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, like in a close knit working environment, like in a company where you're working, or a job where everybody gets along and we all know who we are, right? It's not just some guy the guy over there. I don't know what he's like. You work closely together. You know he's a good guy. He's fun. He's got a sense of humor. He cares about kittens and all the other bullshit that we think of as human, compassionate people. Doesn't matter how well they know you. Someone says creep.
Yeah.
You're done.
Game over.
And we know that the guy's not actually a creep. We already know that, right?
Yeah.
So, or like pervert or whatever, some negative thing.
Yeah.
Usually to do with being inappropriate for women. We already know that he's not actually a creep, but he's been labeled a creep, which means that the women are out of sorts with him.
Yeah.
He is no longer in good standing with the women in, the social group. Therefore, he's out. And our understanding that this guy is just being slandered doesn't matter, because we go back to who controls social reality.
Yeah.
It isn't you and me, brother.
No. No, it's not.
So these are all the things that informed my departure from the men's rights movement. And subsequent to departing from that, I was a MGTOW when I was still working with ABFM. I kind of migrated my thinking into a MGTOW thinking, and I still at the time thought that they, at least had some value in the political discourse, even if I knew that they weren't going to succeed in what they were doing. I thought at least it was valuable that they were out there throwing the message out. I have, since leaving them, done more thinking, and I realized that they are approaching the argument incompetently. And I don't mean just ABFM, my old buddies back at that site. I just mean the whole men's rights movement is approaching this social issue with a kind of a willful ignorance.
Do you think that they considering the time you were with them and the departure and where you are now, do you think that they have since then have a different perspective, or do you think it's still the same rhetoric repeated again and again?
Well, a whole lot of stuff I've come to understand a lot of stuff that I didn't understand when I was there. And part of that is being inside the bubble, right? That these are your direct colleagues in what is a very difficult struggle, right? So you don't want to look at them and go, wait a minute, these guys on my team are fucking retarded. That's a really hard thing to do, because well, wait a minute, I'm with them, maybe I'm retarded. But there's an element to that. So sometimes I shake my head at some of the stuff, and I'm like, why didn't I see that? But the framing of the men's rights argument in terms of that, this is a struggle. We're going to fund a women's shelter, or we're going to fund a men's shelter, or allowing the feminist opposition to the men's rights, position to inform the thinking of the men's rights position, right? That you get attacked by powerful feminist organizations enough time, and even though you're opposed to them, their thinking begins to inform your response to it. So you start thinking that this is a feminist versus MRA argument, and it's not. It's not. That's just a surface issue. I am increasingly of the opinion that feminist and men's rights, these two apparent sides to this argument, are both just surface manifestations of something deeper. And for lack of a better way to explain this, I think it's a rejection of the ideas of the Enlightenment. And I'm talking about from two and a half centuries of Enlightenment values, which informed the emergence of representative democracy in the Western world, which informed the structure of our legal system, that you have evidence-based inquiry, that you have presumption of innocence, the ideas that led to a scientific revolution,
right?
That you start with an observation and you formulate a hypothesis, and then you test the hypothesis, and then you go back and you refine your model, and if your predictions from that model don't match up with your future data, then your model is broken, and you got to come.
You have to change it. Yeah, absolutely. You have to absolutely change the model.
All of this emerges from the ideas of the Enlightenment of the 17th and 18th century, and we're still benefiting from all that stuff that we're talking here across continents through a TCP network, right?
Yes, exactly.
And I have a device in a room in my house which keeps my food refrigerated. And then I throw a switch on the wall and the lights come on. All of this comes out of the Enlightenment, and we are seeing in our society a rejection of Enlightenment ideals in favor of what I call it's typically called postmodernism, but I think it's medieval thinking, where your emotions are the dictate of reality.
Now, okay, this is what you're saying now. Oh, it really strikes a vein with me because I've thought the same thing, and when it comes to history and what history has taught us, and there tends to be a cyclical nature to human understanding. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Now, what you're talking about, as far as I see it, is that yes, we've gone through this dark and light ages of understanding and thinking, and I'm sure we'll repeat that cycle again and again. Do you believe that where we are now is sort of a downward swing towards another form of understanding?
I hate to make predictions like that. It feels like it.
It
feels like this, right? I would love to be wrong, and I hope I am, because it may be that we're looking at a bump. It might be something that corrects. You might see the next the next youth generation rejecting the social justice mindset as being too reactionary, too emotionally frothy. And I certainly find the social justice mindset to just be like much too emotionally turbulent for my preference, both as an adult man now, and also when I was that age, when I was 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, I found the high emotion emo culture, which was, I guess, the precursor to the social justice culture. In the 1980s, we had a social movement amongst the very young people of my age at the time. Yeah. We called them emo. And it wasn't just a form of music, it was a social culture among young people. And I found it too emotionally frothy, too like it was like having your balls hanging out. I wasn't comfortable with it. I was more like, you grew up watching Star Trek, and the guy I identified with was Spock, because Spock had it locked down.
Mm-hmm.
But I see now that this, and I think actually the social justice ideology, the social justice ethos, is more powerful, more prevalent than the feminist ethos. That feminism is actually just an emergent.
Yeah, it almost feels like the feminist arm of that is just a sprout.
It's just a sprout out of the social justice thing.
Yeah, absolutely,
exactly.
Absolutely.
And that this social justice mindset is essentially a medieval mindset.
Yeah.
It is medieval thinking.
It's almost like we're in the times of Galileo.
Yeah, and then we're gonna burn him, burn the witch. If you weigh as much as a duck, you're a witch.
It's fucked up to think about it that way, but I honestly can't. It's so familiar to that.
But the other thing that I know is that outside of our little narrow, political ideology and those who we directly oppose, there's a growing movement. In fact, it's apparently a profitable movement of people who dig into the lives of public figures or semi-public figures. And you don't have to be like, Prince Charles to be a public figure. I'm a public figure written in small letters, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're a public figure.
Mm-hmm.
People who have a persona of being a do-gooder, like a Richard Dawkins. Although he's a kind of a rabble-rouser,
mm-hmm.
he's doing what his particular area is, the teaching of biological sciences and the rejection of religious thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing it because he wants to have a more humane, less violent, less crazy world, right? Let's be less living out of a mystical textbook, and let's be more rational, making decisions based on evidence.
Yeah.
So he's a public do-gooder, and his persona is of a humanitarian type of guy, as much as he's an argumentative bastard and a bit of a cunt in it when it comes to debate. He's still doing it out of what he sees as the public good. You see people digging into the lives of Richard Dawkins, Steven Pinker, public do-gooders, and digging into their families' histories, whether true or false or fabricated, and saying, well, your family made its money on slavery. Therefore, no, I'm not kidding. And therefore, you're a bad person. You should be ashamed. And then, of course, I think the thing is that there's some form of indirect payoff that you pay these people not to say that about you. But this is quite apart from men's rights, MGTOW, manosphere, any of that stuff, or feminism. This is like another area of social justice warrior thinking, digging into the past of somebody, and whether they had slavery in their family or not, it doesn't matter to me.
Of course.
But in the medieval mind, you inherit the sins of the father, right?
All right. Okay, so my question is this. Why in the 21st, or what are we, in the 21st century?
Yeah.
Why is this coming up now?
Because we're rejecting modern thinking. We're rejecting the Enlightenment as a culture, and we're going back to medieval thinking.
Yeah, I know that. I see that. And every time I see it, I have this flashback to being a kid learning social studies. And
when you think about why, look at a modern social justice warrior on a college campus and ask yourself, does this person, I mean, just a hypothetical social justice warrior, you can make them, 19 years old, you can make them male or female, and if it's male, it's a guy with a hipster haircut, and he's got a scarf around his neck, and he's got glasses with lenses in them that don't do anything. And he writes a fixie. Okay.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, does this person prefer to evaluate the world and make their decisions and form their opinions based on the very fast emotion response that we all have? Like, your emotions are fast and they're very efficient in terms of your reactions. Or does he prefer to be more measured in his thinking and evaluate data calmly, rationally, in the cold light of day, and reserve his opinion until he's measured the evidence? So is he emotional and quick to come to a conclusion based on, oh, that makes me feel bad, therefore you're bad, right?
Yeah.
Or is he more measured and say, well, I have a very strong emotional reaction. I think I'm just going to have a little sit down here and think about, am I right about this or am I wrong? Well, which one is it?
Yeah.
Okay? That following the ideals of the Enlightenment, which is, decisions from evidence, rationality, inquiry into the facts. It doesn't matter if you want a particular thing in a representative democracy, we have to go with what the vote is. Mm-hmm. Or, I feel this way, therefore I will have it. God damn it! My way is right! Because I am right! Because it makes me feel right! Right?
Yeah.
There are these two different forms of thinking. One of them is modern. That's the rationalist approach. One of them is postmodern. Or, if you prefer, medieval.
Well, one of the most disappointing things to me is, being an expatriate here, 12 plus years, away from my friends that I grew up with in good old Canada.
Yeah.
And reconnecting with them now and listening to them talk like that. Listening to them behave in a way that I don't recognize them anymore.
They've gone medieval, haven't they?
Yes, they've gone medieval, and I don't recognize them anymore. And I think to myself, wait a second, man, don't you remember, like, when I was there and we were, like, young and we had things to think about and we played music and we had good ideas? Like, what the fuck happened to you, man? Now, I've been through this experience a number of times, and I'm starting to worry.
Here's what the fuck happened to them. Medieval thinking, that is impulsive, emotional thinking.
But where did they get that from?
It's easier than being rational. Being rational, being measured, is hard work. It's difficult.
True.
And that's why we're going.
It's not immediately rewarding.
No, and it requires actual discipline and mental hard work.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I have a reactionary feeling against people of some other ethnicity than mine, right? I'm a white guy, and I find myself in a community full of black people. Well, I'm going to have an emotional gut reaction, like either they're alien to me or I'm alien to them. So there's a difference, right? Like, and I can go, I'm afraid, or wait a minute, I'm afraid, or I'm ashamed, right? That's an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
I'm ashamed of the history, the history of slavery, or the history of racial bigotry in particularly the U.S., but it was in Canada too.
Yeah.
And then I can react out of that emotional response, either of my fear or my shame, or I can, and that's easy. It's quick. It's right at the surface because my emotions are older in terms of evolutionary capability than my rational thinking.
Yes.
Or I can respond in a more measured and calm fashion, and I can go, okay, yeah, there's a history of, slavery and racial bigotry, and a lot of bad stuff was done by white people against black people. But wait a goddamn minute, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
I grew up I was born in the 1970s.
Yeah.
I wasn't born in the 1940s or 50s or 60s. I grew up. All that was after me. Yeah, okay, I'm white, but it's not the Hitler wore pants argument. Okay, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Hitler wore pants argument is, well, Hitler wore pants, right?
Yeah.
You agree that Hitler wore pants?
Yeah.
I see that you're wearing pants. Clearly, you, sir, are Hitler,
Yeah.
right? or at least you are like Hitler because you're wearing pants.
Well, I mean that's mirrored, especially in today's.
That's the Hitler. I call that the Hitler wore pants argument, and that's the same argument that, well, whites enslaved blacks, and you're white, therefore you enslaved blacks.
Yeah.
That's
Well, it even gets worse than that. Think about this: the Confederate flag represents racism. You like the Confederate flag, therefore you're a fucking racist.
You know what? That's the Hitler wore pants argument too.
Unbelievable, man.
And that's why I use Hitler wore pants, because it reduces it down to how absurd it actually is.
Yeah.
But that's our emotional brain. That's the emotional, and it happens fast, like instantaneously. And you have to have some mental discipline to just go, oh, wait a minute. I didn't enslave black people. Like, until I'd never even met a black person before I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
Right? And so, yeah, I had some bias because like there was like an alienness. Like, I'm white, never seen a black person. Wow, you got really funky looking hair, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow, you're different than me.
Yeah. And so in a more measured and calm fashion, I can go, well, we each have a separate history. We each and rather than going, you're black and therefore scary, I'm going to go, well, you got different skin, and I after some reflection on and thinking, I realized that your different color of skin than mine doesn't much matter at all. I don't actually give much of a fuck, right? Other than that, right?
You know, and it's the same with sexuality.
Yeah.
I mean, you come from the West Coast.
Yeah, but see, this is the difference between modernist, which is to say rational, measured thinking, and postmodernist or medieval thinking, which is that instantaneous emotional gut thing. But it's easier to go with the gut. It's easier. It's less effort. You just go with the flow, man. And you're always right because you feel right, so you are right.
Well, one of the reasons they always feel right is because they always feel like they're part of the majority.
Well, they are part of the majority.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends on how you count the majority. Do you count it based on media? Do you count it based on true numbers in society?
That's how you measure.
I mean, to me, a lot of their power comes through, in my opinion, what do you call it? A manufactured majority.
Yeah.
And that's that's a very powerful thing. A manufactured majority. And the only way you can manufacture a majority is if you have the means to sell it through the media, technology, and that's what they do. And it works. It works for them very, very well. People buy into it. They suck it up, and they become one of those, what did you call it, primitive thinking people?
Primitive thinker, yeah.
Yeah.
If he weighs as much as a duck, he's a witch. Burn him!
Yeah.
So my present and admittedly evolving view of men's issues, I'll say, and more specifically MGTOW, is that this isn't actually even a male versus female struggle. That is only a surface manifestation of something much deeper that's going on in our society.
I agree.
And I still see massive value for men individually to be MGTOW, because it's like, well, screw your fucked up rules. I'm going to play by mine, and you can go fuck off.
Well, what we need as men is another Galileo.
Yeah.
Not as an individual, but as a concept.
Yeah, exactly. But for example, the free speech, right? Free speech is an Enlightenment value, and it is now massively under threat, particularly in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
You may be aware that a woman named, let's see if I can remember her name. I have it on my screen here.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Stephanie Guthrie.
Mm-hmm.
She is a feminist political activist. She recruited a guy named Gregory Allen Elliott, who was in his early 50s, to do graphic design work for her. He designed posters for her little political group, and he did it for free because he was like, I'm a good guy, I'll help you out.
Yeah.
Then he caught this graphic designer dude, caught wind that Guthrie, the young feminist, was engaging in a campaign of smearing and slandering another young man who had developed a somewhat obnoxious, or prefer comedically obnoxious, video game which involved punching Anita Sarkeesian in the face. Okay, right? And Stephanie Guthrie, and outraged by this video game, was contacting all the employers that were prospective employers of this young video game designer, and contacted his local newspaper in order to foreclose any possibility of him having a successful career.
Wow.
Wanted to destroy his life. And this graphic designer in his 50s, who had been doing posters for this young feminist, said, wait a minute, no, you can't do that. Fuck that shit. You cannot do that to a person. And, of course, then she turned her wrath on him. And they had a battle in public over Twitter where they, argued and disagreed with one another. And that is now in a courtroom where she has charged him with criminal harassment.
Jesus Christ.
Now, all he did, as far as I'm able to determine by reading this in the National Post and multiple articles, all he did is disagree with, number one, her campaign of harassment against this other young video game designer, and disagree with her political views. Okay? She's a political activist. If you can't disagree with her political views, then she's in the wrong game.
Yeah.
But the guy, the 50-year-old graphic designer, is facing up to 6 months in prison and the ruination of his career. I mean, his career's already done. It's over.
Jesus Christ,
He's now
man.
a public pariah. He's been charged with criminal harassment via Twitter.
Wow.
And this has some really serious consequences for free speech. Like, this is political speech, right?
But where is this in Canada?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But this is where we have the medieval mind looking at free speech and going, well, free speech is bad because you might disagree with me. Versus the modern mind going, free speech is really, really fucking important, because if you don't have it, then you don't have a democracy or the courts or evidence-based inquiry or scientific inquiry.
But do you, I want to ask you this. Do you think that concept of free speech being unnecessary because you disagree with me, is that political? I mean, how powerful is that within politics in North America right now?
Well, very, because the courts have at least entertained this enough to let it go to trial.
Jesus, that's unbelievable, man.
That's the chilling thing, is that this was not looked at by the prosecutors and judges and said, fuck you, get out of here, you moron. They said, okay, we'll have a court, we'll have a trial, right?
You know what's funny? If that happened here, that exact same scenario happened here,
they would say, fuck you, you moron, get the hell out of here.
Exactly. They would have said, what the fuck? Get the fuck out of here. Exactly. Wasting our time.
Yeah, so this is where I think we go, this isn't men versus women. This isn't feminism versus MRA. This isn't feminism versus libertarians or anarchists. This is medieval thinking versus modern thinking, and that's the real serious issue. That's what this actually comes down to. All this other stuff, I used to be an MRA. Before that, I wrote political polemical stuff against the Republican, against the Democrats. And then my thinking evolved, and I dug deeper, and I saw that feminism was a problem. I became an MRA for a long time. I've subsequently abandoned that, digging deeper and realizing that MGTOW is the only possibility for men. but it's not about men and women. It's about emergence of modern thinking, modern reality, or medieval thinking, where we go to this kind of dark age thinking.
Wait. Do you think that after coming to MGTOW, do you think that concept of understanding exists within MGTOW?
No, it doesn't. That's why I'm going to try to introduce it. And like sometimes I'm successful introducing ideas, and other times not. As you know, I got thrown on my ass out of MGFM.
Yeah, I know.
But the thing is, if we limit our conception to this as male versus female, we're missing the substance of what the actual problem is. The fact that it manifests as male versus female, or men versus feminism, or something like that, is that rational, critical thinking, evidence-based inquiry, the measured response is, I won't say it's male because it's not necessarily male. It is characterized as male, right?
Now, hold on a second. Now, my understanding of MGTOW, at least up until now, it's never been male versus female, but more an understanding of both behavior.
It's understanding that there's a gynocentric populist view.
Yes.
And that you're going to get the short end of that stick in 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
But this is, when you look at the actual details of any particular argument, let's say genital integrity of little tiny toddlers, right? Little kids, little, the most precious, the people that we should be most protective of, and we brutally mutilate their fucking genitals. It's shocking when you think of it.
No, I made a video about that recently, and how they do it in Muslim cultures when the boy's 7 years old, and they have a party when it happens.
Oh yeah.
So I understand that.
We fucked you right up.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying, and until now I still feel the same. As a MGTOW man, and everything I've experienced to bring me to this.
By the way, I don't say that MGTOW is a bad choice for men. I absolutely, as an individual to protect yourself, MGTOW is the path.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
But looking at the broader political, happenings and the narrative of society, I think, and this is informed, for me at least, by my history as an MRA, right?
Yeah.
That I have a lot of the anti-feminist, the men's rights versus feminism, still, that history there. So from a political perspective, I see these things on a society-wide scale as, do men get to have the things that women have, like shelters and treatment as human beings in the courts?
Yeah.
But this is...
They don't.
They don't, but it's not because it's men and women.
No.
It's because in our culture, we have decided, for whatever reason, that rational evidence-based inquiry is a male province, that it is a male thing. Yeah. That's masculine. Logic is masculine, right? And I've seen male feminists use the language in criticism of MRAs, saying, you cannot just brutally bludgeon a woman with logic.
Yeah.
Right? To equate logic with some sort of brutality against women. To me, that's outlandish. But in their framing of that argument, you see that logic is being cast as masculine, whereas emotion is cast as feminine.
Yes.
So, and it's not like men don't have emotions and women don't have logic. It's just that socially we've decided for whatever reason
it must be that way.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to say was that my current understanding of MGTOW. Now, and I'll bring this up. I don't know how well you are versed in what's, you know, I don't know how well you have your fingers on the pulse of what's happening in this little MGTOW community on YouTube, but one of the things that's come up a couple times recently is the fact that, okay, we understand the nature of males and females. We understand that. We understand.
But I don't think we do.
Well,
Yeah.
this is just what's come up, okay?
Yeah.
We've heard it. We know the natures of one another. Now what? Now what do we do? But I agree with you. I don't think we do. I've offered up my services to say I want to discuss what's next. However, at the same time, I don't think we really do, and we'll never truly understand it as long as we see it as man versus woman.
Well, the thing, there's a term, I don't know if you're familiar with it. You're familiar with the term hug box?
Yes, I've heard that. Yeah.
Okay. There is an attraction to what I call the hug box, and I'm sure other people call it this as well. And that's like, for the MGTOW community, it's women are evil. Women are malicious, they're, you know, two-faced or malevolent or manipulative or whatever. Some negative thing.
Yeah.
Women are bad. I don't like women. Bad. Right?
Yeah.
I just want men around me. I don't want to be served by a woman in a store. I don't want a female waitress. Can I have a male waiter over here instead, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I don't want a female doctor. I'd rather have a male doctor, etc., on and on it goes.
Yeah.
And that is that men who've been burned, who've been hurt, who've been earnest in their desire to, you know, have an interface with the world, and have been wounded in some way, want to have to commiserate with someone else who's also been hurt, and go, yeah, you're okay, buddy. I'm okay. We're good guys. Women are bad. We're good. They're bad.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is the commiseration.
That's the hug box.
Yeah. It has a limit. The commiseration, it has a limit.
I'm not going to say, and I've characterized it in fairly dismissive terms just now. I've been a little bit nasty towards people in that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I have to now say there is value in that from a social perspective. That you have to have some camaraderie. We are social animals.
Yeah.
There is value in the hug box. The problem is that we get stuck there and we don't move forward.
Yes. That's the point I've been trying to make about kind of what I've been seeing happening is there's men in the community saying, now what? We understand these differences. Now what? Maybe that you can translate into that. Yes, I've hated women, and now what?
Well, I think the way forward, and this is, I'm not coming to you with a complete plan here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just me, like, I'm as lost in the woods as everybody else.
Yeah.
But I think the way forward is recognizing this deeper dichotomy between modern and medieval thinking, and the consequences of that, where what's really under threat are due process in the courts, free speech on the internet, free speech in general, freedom of thought, the right to have a different political thought than another person. We live in a political democracy in Canada here, and we have a guy who is going on trial. He is actually in the courtrooms of our country facing jail essentially for politically disagreeing with a feminist. He didn't threaten her. He didn't attack her at a personal level. He didn't sexually, mistreat her. He didn't call her any kind of sexual slander. He just disagreed with her politically, and he's facing jail for that. We're looking at a fundamental threat to our basic foundational values of a society, free speech and representative democracy, and the right to have a dissenting opinion.
Okay, I was kind of chuckling, and I'll tell you why. You say this is happening in Canada, supposedly one of the most progressive countries in the world. Meanwhile, here I am in Indonesia, and only about a year ago, a Canadian man, expatriate, who was living here with his Canadian expatriate wife, was put in jail on charges of pedophilia and sexually molesting a child, which didn't happen.
Was it a charge that had merit, or
No,
it cooked
absolutely zero. I made videos about it, man. I made videos about it. I made articles about it. I wrote articles about it. I've shared it with Barbar on his site. I mean, I was pretty vocal about it when it happened.
Who cooked up the charge against him? Was it his ex-wife?
Nope. It was a rich mother of a child that attended the school. And behind that, she simply rallied other mothers to support her. He was not guilty. He didn't do a fucking thing. I mean, one of the witness testimonies that put him in jail was from a 5-year-old child that said he created a magic stone out of thin air to anesthetize me so I couldn't feel the pain. And that made it into the courtroom as evidence.
Jesus.
It seriously took about 4 or 5 different doctors that already refused or said there is no physical evidence of sexual molestation on these children until one corrupt doctor agreed, and then that was put into the court. Now, you tell me, what the fuck is the difference between that in this third world corrupt fucking country and what is happening now in the so-called first world Canadian country with this guy you were talking about right now?
There is no difference.
There's no fucking difference. I feel for this dude. I've met people that know him as a teacher myself. And in fact, he spent 6 months in jail before he was even charged of the crime.
Yeah.
What's the fucking difference?
This is the medieval mind, man.
It's worldwide.
Oh, yeah.
We're in some dark fucking ages, brother. Dark fucking ages. And it's not a manifestation of Western feminism.
No,
It's
well,
not.
I mean, the medieval mind was always there, right? The modern, the rational modern mind is a really, really new thing. It's only about 2.5 centuries old. And remember, it requires rigor. It requires work. You have to work hard to have that. It's easier to just go based off your emotional impulses.
Right.
And, most people, let me back up a little bit. As children, when we're little children, we have medieval minds.
Yes.
We live in a form of magical thinking. Our emotions rule over us. And it's growing up and becoming, modern adults that we stop having that magical thinking, that medieval mind. Lots of people never grow up. They stay children.
Yeah.
That's the real struggle. Whether you are an MRA or a libertarian or an anarchist or a MGTOW,
Yeah.
this is the struggle. It's not about men and women. It's about medieval versus modern thinking.
Well, you know what? That's how I want to perceive the pursuits of MGTOW. I want to perceive it like that, on a level where rationality, understanding, learning and growing, although be it within a community of men, because obviously in the real world you're not given that privilege. If
There's nobody else who's going to fight this fight.
No. If you have a dick, well, good luck finding somebody in the real world that's going to give you the time of day and listen to what you have to say.
There are a few. Like,
Yeah.
They're very rare. So fucking hang on to them, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, dude, I think we've probably blown it.
Yeah, we're good, man. We are at 1 hour and 31 minutes, and
Yeah.
I think we said we had to say thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate it. Your voice has been, like I said, requested. So, you know, don't give up on what you're doing, because
No. Well, I mean, I'm very flattered to have you contact me and
yeah.
record.
Well,
stuff.
and I'll tell you again, I contacted you. Well, I would have contacted you anyway. I just wanted. It's really nice for me to talk to people from where I come from once in a while, and especially when we talk about these subjects. But remember this: your voice was requested.
Well, that's very cool.
Yeah, it was requested. I've been doing interviews for a while. I've had some good ones. I've had some bad ones. But I've had people say, can you talk to JTO? And I'm glad it happened. I really like...
Maybe we'll do it again. That would be very cool.
Yeah, well, definitely. But regardless of that, I'm really glad I snuck this in with you before I left.
Yeah, awesome.
It's very vital. It's good information, and I'll tell you something. People are going to want to hear it in this community.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope we've provided a little bit of insight, because this community does need to. It needs to do more than just go. I'm okay. You're okay. They're bad.
Yes, absolutely. It's that topic has been coming up a lot.